puppy, a car, and 84 dead bodies. That's the John Wick franchise in one sentence. But here's a question nobody ever asks. What if John Wick just didn't? What if the greatest assassin in cinema history looked at that empty dog bed, took a breath, and chose to grieve instead of kill? No revenge, no Baba Yaga, no high table, no 4 films, no billion-dollar franchise. Just a broken man sitting alone in a house in New Jersey. Today on Movix Guy, we explore the version of John Wick that never happened, and why it would have been far darker than anything we actually saw. Here's something most fans don't know. Every major studio rejected John Wick before it was made. The premise of a retired assassin avenging his dog was considered completely unmarketable. You have this over-the-hill assassin whose wife dies of natural causes, gives him a puppy, some Russian punk kills his puppy, and he kills 84 people, director Chad Stahelski explained, and executives simply couldn't see it working. But it goes deeper than that. The original script was titled Scorn, and in that version, John Wick only killed 2 or 3 people. Stahelski described it as very contained, almost like a Cold War thriller. It was a simple revenge story with a standard hitman, no mythology, no Baba Yaga, no Continental, no high table. Keanu Reeves put his own money into the project to get it made. Even the producer twice deferred his own fees to cover costs and lent the costume designer his personal credit card. So, before we ask what if John never took revenge, we should acknowledge that this entire universe almost never existed at all. To understand why revenge was inevitable, you need to understand what Daisy actually meant. When John asked Viggo Tarasov's permission to retire and marry Helen, Viggo assigned him an impossible task to complete before he could leave the assassin's life. John completed it. Everything that followed, his marriage, his house, his years of peace, came at an enormous cost. Keanu Reeves' own personal experience with bereavement, having lost his daughter in 1998 and his partner in 2001, helped him relate to John's emotional state. That grief is real in every frame of the film. Helen was everything John had sacrificed his entire identity for. And then Daisy, the puppy Helen sent him from beyond death so he'd have something to hold on to, was killed in the same night his car was taken. John Wick is a retired assassin who returns to his old ways after a group of Russian gangsters steal his car and kill his puppy, the last gift given to him by his late wife Helen. It wasn't revenge for a dog. It was revenge for the last piece of Helen he had left. Now, the real question. What if John chose grief over revenge? Yosef Tarasov never faces consequences. Viggo Tarasov's entire criminal syndicate, which John himself helped build by completing that impossible task, continues operating. The foundations of the Tarasov Empire were laid by John's own actions. Without revenge, that empire grows unchallenged. Every person in John's world harbors massive vendettas against him, not ordinary anger, but fury. Ms. Perkins, Sophia, Cassian, the Bowery King, all of them absolutely livid the moment they see him again. A retired John Wick, sitting quietly in New Jersey, is still a target. The underworld never truly lets anyone leave. Viggo had already dispatched a 12-man team to kill John at his own home the night Iosef struck. Without the massacre that follows, those contracts don't disappear. They multiply. And here's the darkest part. John's real name is Jardani Jovanovic, a Belarusian orphan raised by the Ruska Roma crime syndicate, trained from childhood to be the best killer alive. Without revenge, that man just sits in an empty house, with no wife, no dog, no purpose, no identity. Baba Yaga, the most feared assassin in the entire underworld, reduced to a ghost. That's not peace. That's the worst ending of all. Chad Stahelski has ideas for at least 9 John Wick movies. John Wick 5 is currently in development with an entirely new story. This franchise keeps expanding because revenge, it turns out, has no real ending. One choice leads to another. One body leads to 100. But the version where John chooses silence, that man doesn't survive it. Not because anyone kills him, because without the mission, there's nothing left of him to keep alive. Subscribe to Movix Guy. We find the stories hiding inside the stories you already love.